Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Hopefully you got the files that I sent. I'm going to start right off with those files today. I sent you a GeoDatabase this time. One of the things that I'd like for you to know about GeoDatabases is, unlike what they call the spaghetti model where everything's just a loose shapefile, it's not going to show you the GeoDatabase files inside the GeoDatabase when you're looking at it through Windows. Computers being a little bit slow. But I sent you today this GeoDatabase with select by location. Here, all of these files look just like normal shape files, but they're kind of grayed out. They don't have the color that a shapefile normally has. I'm going to go in and open up that GeoDatabase on my desktop. And you'll see inside that GeoDatabase, you get this A000 list of files. This is what it's always going to look like when you're looking inside a GeoDatabase. You're not going to see that nice list of the different shape files. So it's a new file type, but like I said last time, it's a much cleaner way of sharing files and keeping your data managed in one place. So we can go ahead and bring all of these files into the map today. We're just going to dive right into using select by location. And I think US streams is going to bog us down a little bit, so I'm going to uncheck that one for now. Put everything in here, make Montana counties something you can see, and just run these in a size and color everybody should be able to see. Let's do something. I'm not going to make these blue because I want you to be able to see the color as we do selections. Blow rivers up, and we'll come back to Montana streams later on, but this should kind of give us an idea of what we're looking at. So we've looked at the selection menu a little bit. I had you set up at the beginning of the semester, set selectable layers, and I realize a lot of you no longer have this tool because you're not working on the computer in the lab. So I'm going to go through how to get that back again. What you want to do is go back to customize. We want to go into customize mode. We're going to pull that tool in, go into commands. And once this list is populated, we're going to scroll down to selection. Highlight selection and just scroll down this list until you see set selectable layers. Now, if you click on this and hold your button down, you can drag that over into your selection menu and drop it over here wherever you want it. So you can put that in your menu. I'm going to go ahead and delete it since I've already got it there. That gives you that set selectable layers tool, and we're going to pay attention to what's selectable and what's not as we go through this. But we'll start with just some of the selection options. Under selection, we've got select by attributes, which we'll talk about in the next installment, select by location, and I'll put a graphic in the map so we can look at select by graphics. Let me do that real quick. So on your drawing toolbar, if you don't have that, customize toolbars, make sure draw is checked. In your drawing toolbar, you have this little box right here. Rectangle is the default, but you can draw whatever you want. Click on that, draw a rectangle in your map. This is just a little graphic hovering in your map. Now you can select by graphics. That's going to grab anything in your map here. Montana streams is a little too close to the selection color, so I'm going to make that darker, something we can see. So that selection color should stand out. Anyway, that's select by graphics, and you can change what type of graphic you want to use. You can draw your polygon, in which case each left click puts down a vertex, double click ends your polygon, circle, ellipse, line, curve, freehand, marker, basically like putting down a little point shape file, only it is just a graphic. Anyway, you can use that select by graphics. I'm going to set my default back to rectangle. That's select by graphics. And as we go through this today, I'm going to tell you periodically to clear your selection. This is your clear selected features option. You want to get rid of that graphic, you can just click on it and delete it. You've got to be in the pointer mode. So that's select by graphics. We've also talked a little bit about create, add, remove, and select from current features. We're going to really go into that today. But the next thing I want to come down to is selection options. What we're going to do today is select by location. But let's first talk about the selection options and we'll come back to it. So your default interactive selection is to select anything that partially or completely is within the box or graphic that you're using. So when we do select by location or select by graphic, anything that touches the outside of the boundary of the graphic that you're using or the shapefile that you're using and falls within, partially or completely, is going to be selected. You can select features that are completely contained. In that case, when you go to select something, you draw a box. Anything that falls entirely within that box is going to be selected, nothing that crosses the boundary of it. Oh, I'm sorry, that's the feature that allows it to touch the boundary. This is the feature that says completely within, which means it can't touch the boundary, it has to be entirely within. We'll go over this in a little bit. So this checkbox is also the default. Clear the selection for invisible layers when a new selection is made. So in this case, I've selected a bunch of Montana streams. I can uncheck that, and it will still continue to be selected, even though it's no longer visible. These are still selected items. So it is just defaulting to removing those when I make a new selection. I'm going to go back and set my default back to partially or completely within the box. We're not really going to deal with scaling anything, but your selection tolerance is 3 pixels. That's basically the size of the pixels within the screen. If you grab something, it's giving you a very narrow range of where your clicker hit. 3 pixels is pretty reasonable, honestly, unless you're very bad at grabbing the exact location you want. It's warning threshold. I'm going to grab a whole bunch of items so you can see what this is. It'll give you an error message. You're setting your record count to 2,000 if you select all or switch selection. So what it's telling you is it's going to be a little bit slower if you grab too many items. So let's do that. We'll set to 2,000 right now. I'm going to go ahead and grab a lot more than 2,000 items, hopefully. Now, if I go into the attribute table, I've got more than 2,000 items. If I switch selection, it's going to give me this message saying it could take a little while. In this case, I'm just going to say no. The other thing it's telling you that's going to set is if you go into selection and say select all of the Montana streams, I'm going to get that same error message. Contains a large number of records, anything over 2,000. Do you want to continue? Yes. Okay, I'm going to clear my selection. So that's where we are with that one. And I've taught you to export when you have something selected and you go into data and export. So I've selected all of my Montana streams that fall within a certain county, and I want to export those as a brand new layer with just the items I have selected. When I go to export data, it is only exporting the items that I have selected because this box is checked. You can uncheck that box and it's going to export the entire layer instead of just what you have selected. So those are your selection options. We can go into select by location, but first I want to talk about the interactive selection method, because we're going to use that whether we're grabbing on the map or we're grabbing in select by locations. We have these 4 different options. Create a new selection, which is the default. When I grab something in the map, it's going to create a brand new selection, and it's going to automatically clear what I just selected when I create a new selection. Add to the current selection is going to retain what I have selected and add something else to it when I make a new selection instead of clearing it out. Remove from the current selection is also going to retain what I've got selected, but this time it's going to take out anything I select. And select from the current selection is going to choose only those items that are already selected from this and remove everything else, but it's not going to select new items that were not already selected. So let's go into select by location. Select by location, I sent a handout along with your files today that should help you understand this, but the thing you need to understand about select by location is that it basically reads like a sentence. What you want to do is select features from, or one of the other 4 selection methods. Read it like a sentence. Select features from Montana streams is what I have selected. What I want to do with them is intersect with the source layer, which in this case is US streams. So I've got all these different options here for what I want to do, but I'm choosing what I want to select from, and I'm choosing how I want it to operate with this other layer. So let's talk through these different options we have. Intersect with the source layer feature. That's essentially what we have as the default selection method. Anything that touches or crosses the boundary of your source layer. Anything from your target layer that touches or crosses partially or completely your source layer. Again, intersect 3D is just a 3-dimensional version of that same feature, but we're not going to really get into 3D. Are within a distance of the source layer feature. In this case, if we choose that option, we can apply a search distance. And again, 3 dimensions. Contain the source layer feature. That's anything that is, if I said, say, Montana, any US streams that are contained within Montana, they're allowed to cross the boundary of Montana, but they also have to be inside Montana. So they're either partially or completely inside Montana, crossing the boundary of Montana. That's contain. Completely contain means they have to fall entirely inside the boundary. They can't touch the boundary at all. And Clementi is a little bit confusing. Clementi essentially says that if the boundary of the item is the same as the boundary you're choosing to select, if the boundary of the target layer is the same as the boundary of the source layer, it cannot be selected. So Clementi is basically overlapping. What they're saying is a polygon or a line or whatnot is neither inside nor outside the source layer. So if it overlays the source layer, it's going to be excluded. So completely within is essentially the opposite of this first one, or I'm sorry, or is the opposite of contains. So you're looking at something that the source layer is within the target layer instead of vice versa. And same thing, completely means it has to fall entirely inside the boundary. Clementi means that the boundary, if it overlaps, is excluded. Are identical to the source layer feature. This is where I'm using these rivers and streams. You can see in places there are streams that completely overlap the rivers. That means that that feature is identical. Touch the boundary of the source layer feature. That's a little bit self-explanatory. If it goes along the outside boundary of the feature, then it's going to be selected. Share a line segment with. That means if it partially or completely shares a segment of a line or overlaps anywhere, it's going to be selected. Are crossed by the outline of the source layer feature. Again, that's basically the opposite of, oh shoot, I lost my train of thought, guys, sorry, got distracted. Are crossed by the outline of the source layer feature. Okay, so that's the opposite of the previous one where they touch the boundary. Have their centroid in the source layer feature. Essentially, each one of these lines or polygons or whatnot has a centroid point right in the middle of either the line or in the center of the polygon. If that centroid falls inside a boundary, it's included. If it falls outside, it's excluded. So we're going to go through a few of these. We're going to go through a couple of these and just look at using this select by location tool. I'm going to turn all of these back on so that the entire map is turned on. And I'd like to point out, if we set the selectable layers, we go into the selection options. Oh, no, what am I looking for? Oh, I forgot what I'm looking for, sorry. Getting a little distracted over here. So let's just go through this, and when it comes back to me, I'll point it out to you. Sorry, guys. Okay, so let's start with select features from US streams that are crossed by the outline of the source layer Montana. So select features from US streams that are crossed by the outline of the source layer Montana. So our source layer is Montana, and we want to are crossed by the outline. So now if I say apply, anything from US streams that has crossed the boundary of Montana has been selected. This is what I wanted to show you a moment ago. This little checkbox, only show selectable layers in the list. I'm going to uncheck that. If I go up here and use this set selectable layers, watch what shows up here as I unselect these items. They're disappearing because I have this only selectable layers showing up. And as I set my selectable layers through this menu we just added, they're showing up or not. If you turn that off, everything's going to show up in there, whether it's selectable or not. So you're going to get a blank selection if you try and run this. It's not going to select anything. Oh, I didn't clear it first. It's not going to select anything because nothing is selectable. No, I lied. It's still selecting. Not cooperating with me. Anyway, you get the idea. That should have turned off the selectable layer, but it didn't. So I'm going to tell you as we go through this, if you're following along, I'm going to tell you when to clear your selection. So for now, let's say OK and clear the selection on this. So the next one I want to do is select features from US streams that are within the source boundary Montana. So select features from US streams that are within the boundary of Montana. Say apply. So in this case, you'll notice things that are actually touching the boundary, zoom in here, are showing up. If we say are completely within, it's going to pull some of those features out because they're actually, it should pull some of those features out. I guess we, oh, there we go. You can see it up here. A few of these features that crossed the boundary were excluded because they're not completely within the boundary. So let's continue with this. Actually, I'm going to go back and go within the source layer feature and pick those back up. I would like to use the different selection method this time, add to the currently selected features in, and also add anything that crosses the source layer feature. Or let's set it at a distance of the source layer feature. Let's set it to 100 meters. That's going to pick up anything that's within 100 meters of the source layer feature. So we're now using this. It's picked up all these items that cross the boundary because they're within 100 meters of the boundary. We've added this search distance as well. Okay, so if we want to add something back into the selection, we can, or actually, let's just go ahead and remove from the currently selected features. Let's take and remove anything US streams that is within the source layer feature of Silverbow County. Let's say apply. Oh, because I had the search distance. So that's going to remove anything that falls within Silverbow County. And I guess I can point out some of these other features that we have here. Zoom to selected features because I'm not in the right place. Zoom in, you'll notice Silverbow County has been removed from the current selection. You can also, if you like the scale that you're at, say I'm going to scale out a bit and move it over. Instead of zooming to that, I can use the selection pan to selected features, and that's going to keep the same scale, but it's going to move you over and center on the selected features that you have. So let's scroll back in. Oh, crap. Okay, sorry about that. Still learning Zoom, having trouble getting this completely squared away, so bear with me, I apologize. So let's go back in, and what I'd like to start with is this new video is go in and let's select features from US streams that are within Montana. Yeah, let's just say are within. So now I'd like to select from the currently selected features any US streams that are the same as US rivers. So in this case, we can do are identical to the source layer feature, or we can do share a line segment with. Let's do identical and see how many of these exactly overlap. So this is where we have streams and rivers completely overlapping. Where they share a line segment, it's probably going to be the same. Let's just check and see. Yeah, it's the same where they share a line segment. Oh, no, I didn't change that. So you can already see how you can get into trouble if you're not paying attention to what's selectable, what selection method you're using, whether you're using the target or the source layer feature in the right order, and whether you're using the spatial selection method properly. It's pretty easy to get kind of goofy. So in this case, because I had not gone back to creating a new selection, it didn't select anything outside of Montana. But when I look for those two that overlap or share a line segment, it's picked up everything outside of Montana because I chose a new selection method. Okay, so I'm going to close this out. I think you guys probably have a pretty good idea of what to do with this, and you're welcome to play with it. You've got all these different options, but it's pretty apparent how they work. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out, and I'm going to clear my selection. Unpin my catalog so we can look at the whole map. Last class, I'm going to create a new blank map so we can just get rid of all of the items that were in there. But last class, I had you guys use a couple of different mine types to look at how many mines fell within Silverbow County within 1,000 feet of the stream. And I had you use the analysis tools to process this question. But as you probably know now after watching the video, there's an easier way to do this. Let's use select by location to answer that same question. So we're going to select features from placer, load, and unknown, the three mine types. We want them to be within 1,000 feet of streams. Where is the distance? We want it to be within 1,000 feet of Montana streams. So now we've selected all of the mines that are within 1,000 feet of the streams, but we want to further select from the currently selected features that are within Silverbow County. Don't forget to uncheck that distance because it's going to give you that error message. Now, how many is that? We've got 0 placers, 1 load. We should have had a placer. And 0, oh, that's odd. I'm going to have to redo this one.